Welcome back to Embracing New Life, where we explore the intersections of faith, psychology, and the deeply human experience of growth and healing. I'm Ryan Worley, joined by Dr. Dan Green, and today we're talking about something that quietly sits beneath the surface of many hearts this time of year: grief during the holidays. The world tells us this is a season of joy, family, and celebration, but for many it's also a season of remembering. Remembering who's missing, what's changed, and the ache that lingers in the quiet moments between songs and gatherings. Grief has a way of showing up even in the glow of Christmas lights, and the truth is, the more deeply we're loved, the more deeply we grieve. In this episode, we want to bring understanding, compassion, and hope to the reality of the holiday grief, how it affects the mind, body, and spirit, and how we can gently make space for healing without pretending the pain isn't there. So whether this season feels joyful, painful, or somewhere in between, we invite you to slow down with us, to reflect, breathe, and maybe rediscover a small sense of peace, even in the midst of loss. So we find ourselves around the holiday season.
Yes,
and
we are.
We're knocking on the doorstep of the holiday season, and we figured here on the podcast at Embracing New Life that we would dive into something that is pretty important to all of us during the holiday season, or at least comes up a lot for us during the holiday season for a number of different reasons, but that being grief and the holiday season. So that's what we'll be diving into for the next several episodes as we get our feet wet with this, and as we provide some resources for people as they travel through this holiday season of 2025.
Yeah, the holidays are times often both of excitement and joy and positive anticipation, but also complex relationships, dealing with losses, unmet expectations.
Yeah.
To paraphrase an old book, it can be the best of times, it can be the worst of times.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I think back on my holiday experiences. Many of them are very positive, and yet also they're very different now than they used to be. I'm sure that's true for all of us. That people that we used to see every year or celebrate with are no longer with us, or our family patterns are so different.
Yeah.
When I was a child, first thing in the morning on Christmas morning, when my children were little, the same. Now, middle of the afternoon, my children come over, grandchildren, and it's very quiet. So different.
It changes.
It really does change. And even healthy, predictable changes involve loss.
For sure.
It's not the way it used to be.
Yeah. So, safe to say, all people within a certain range of experience are going to have both a lot of joy, but a lot of sadness that kind of accompany this time.
Yeah, and we can set ourselves up unintentionally by expecting too much. The house has to be perfect. The decorations have to be perfect.
Yeah.
We're going to go to every holiday event, whatever. And disappointment's going to happen.
Yeah, that need to kind of want to put on the perfect perception of what we think the holiday season's all about drives a lot of stress and anxiety.
It sure does. And then it gets really complicated when we have a significant loss that we're needing to adjust to. And then the holidays come.
Yeah.
And for some, the holidays are more experienced by what's not present than what is. And then for others, there's a lot of pain associated with the holidays.
Yeah.
Where, they started off good, but then after the evening continued, it would get loud and then might get violent, and people would not speak to each other for a long time. A lot of pain around holidays as well.
Yeah, probably a lot of feeling of connectedness, but also a lot of feeling of disconnectedness too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And because we're so designed to be connected, when that's disrupted, it hurts. it's requiring us to make adjustments, to adapt. And that's painful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We can describe that contentment comes when our expectations and reality are similar.
Mm.
And holidays often are associated with very high expectations. And often we don't even factor in things like we're bound to get tired. Or preparing this meal is going to take a long time. It's going to be stressful.
Yeah.
So one of the things, just as we get started here, looking at how our expectations are formed, and it's really helpful to explore, what am I expecting? Would I change my expectations to be closer to what's most likely to occur? Yes, there might be some disappointment, but it's not as hurtful.
Sure.
And I'm able to cope so much more effectively when my expectations are in line with what's going to happen.
Yeah. Likewise, probably having a mindset of like flexibility and adaptability.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Realistic expectations are important, but also realizing that even if you can get somewhat close to what the expectations realistically end up being, like there's always going to be an element of flexibility and adaptability when you're getting so many people back around the same table for a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to have to be some adjustment on the part of everybody, really.
And over a year, for some people we don't see very often, we change during that time.
Sure.
Or we have kids that go off to school and they come home for the holiday. They've changed, even if it's their first semester.
Sure.
And they've been living differently, and there's adjustments that need to be made. Sometimes our unmet expectations are what's painful. But we also have to be careful not to be too pessimistic and to expect the worst. We humans have a way it can be referred to as self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
If I expect that other person to be cold and distant, I probably will experience them that way.
Exactly.
Really, no matter what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So one of the things that we want to encourage as we look at expectations is, as you were describing earlier, the flexibility. It's healthy to leave space for, I don't know, let's find out.
Yeah.
And so I encourage us to have a sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
Rather than filling in the blanks. Either it's going to be perfect or get ready for the disaster.
Maybe it's somewhere in between.
Likely in between. Yeah. But there are other types of losses that are kind of, they're accentuated during the holiday season.
Yeah.
They're made more obvious. And the most obvious one is when we've had a loved one that's died. And we're going to talk more about that a little bit later. But that loss, the person that was part of this and now isn't, it impacts us in just so many ways. But that's not the only kind of loss that impacts us.
Yeah.
There are relationships that are strained, or maybe there's been a cutoff, and this person may be living, but they're not here. This person may be here, but they're not making eye contact. All types of other types of relational losses that can occur. Developmental changes. Last year, the kids were really excited about this. This year, they're apathetic. Huh? I remember when one of my children identified, I used to so look forward to getting some kind of game or whatever, and now I can just buy that myself. It's like, I'm not sure what to think about presents right now. And I was thinking, yeah, that's right, because I have no idea what to get you.
Exactly.
But that developmental change is normal, healthy.
Yeah.
But it's a loss from a pattern that had been rewarding, and now we've got to learn a new way to do it.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the ways we can talk about grieving, learning a new way, given that we've had a loss.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that, because learning in new ways can be exciting and kind of adventuresome.
Yes, and it can have its own rewards.
Exactly.
Because when we've had a loss, we're not able to get back what's gone.
Yeah.
In fact, in the research on grief, they'll talk about the principle of irreversibility, meaning we grieve something when it's gone and we can't get it back. I can't get back my childhood or my children's childhood, and even my grandchildren's young childhood. Developmentally, we just continue developing, and that's good and healthy and appropriate. But we have to say goodbye to what was so we can accept what is now.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're going to see that's going to be the work of grief we're going to talk about. Now let me get some definition to grief. When I use the term grief, sometimes I see people kind of recoil and, oh no, not that. Or they think that I should be healthier than that. And I want to just emphasize that the process of grief is a very healthy, necessary process in a world that's fallen when we have losses. That grief is the natural, expected reaction to loss. So not only is grief healthy, but if we're not grieving when there's a loss, that is actually unhealthy. We're not making the adaptations that we need to make because of the loss. So, anytime today, or in these podcasts when we talk about grief, we're talking about a healthy process.
Yeah.
It's not pathological, it's not abnormal. Now, it is uncomfortable.
For sure.
And I don't like it.
As is true for most people.
Yeah, right. So we often think if it's comfortable, it must be healthy.
Yeah.
And my desire to overeat chocolate is really comfortable. Not good for me. So comfort and health, they're two independent factors.
Sure.
Grief is often very uncomfortable, but it has a very important purpose. And its purpose is to help us adapt, adjust, to learn how to live well without what used to be. And many times everything inside us says, I don't want that. So it's a lot of work for us to say goodbye to what was, have a new relationship with that, to welcome what is now. That's the work of grief. And it's not very well understood in our culture. A friend of mine who's going through some real intense pain right now with a great loss shared with me, it seems like people around might think it's contagious. That if they get too close to me, they'll have a loss similar to the one I've had. I've heard others make comments like that as they're grieving, often they feel like other people are backing away from them. And we don't know what to do with not only my own grief, but those that are grieving around me. And I see that they're in that adjustment process that is so painful. So those are some of the things we want to talk about in this series.
Yeah. I want to help people normalize it and get to a place where they can cope well during that grief period. Yes, and to cope well, we need to understand what it is, its natural reaction to a loss. We need to understand why, what's its purpose. Its purpose to help us adapt and adjust to be without and fully live in the present. But we also need to see, well, what does it look like? And often people think grief means I'm sad. And I'd like to take you through some descriptors of what's involved in grief. And sad will be one, but there's a lot more. First of all, let's think about it's a whole person, whole body, whole person. It involves all of what it means to be me. For example, physical features can include things like anxiety, feeling a great deal of muscle tension, heart racing,
rapid breathing or involuntarily holding my breath, it can really affect energy. A friend of mine described it as, it feels like somebody took my batteries out. I just don't have energy to do anything. And it can involve tight chest, tight throat, even choking sensation, nausea, upset stomach, disturbances of sleep. And when sleep's disturbed, everything's disturbed.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as you see this body reaction, it's everything is dysregulated. Nothing is the way it should be. For many, stomach issues, GI distress. For others, it's muscle aches, physical pain, or dizziness. It's often diffuse. It's not like, oh, I have this particular problem. It's like, I don't feel right. I don't feel well.
Yeah.
And then they identify, oh, I got an upset stomach, or this ringing in my ears won't stop, or whatever is happening. Very physical. Sometimes this leads people to think, am I going crazy? Am I imagining this? And I would suggest this is the body starting to react, trying to react to being without what has brought comfort, what has brought a sense of well-being. And now it's disturbed. It's different. Well, our behaviors can change considerably while we're grieving. Many of us will isolate, and some will become almost clingy, always wanting to be with people. And then sometimes we'll go between isolation and clinginess and not knowing where do I even want to be. When I'm in one, I want the other. So that sense of disruption of how do I find comfort, where do I fit in? It can greatly affect our problem solving, where we can have difficulty paying attention, keeping our focus, finishing something. I was thinking about a person who would describe, they would go around the house and they would have a cup of coffee in every room. And they, what's this doing here? They're holding one. And then they recognize, oh, I started a cup, and then I said, and then I went and did something else. Then I forgot, and I went and got another cup. Another person described that they were lighting candles because they just appreciated the ambience and the fragrance.
Yeah.
But forgetting that they had them on. And they actually had a little bit of a fire on a table over this incident.
Oh, wow.
So the attention to detail that was typical before the loss, now they're disrupted, and they might have trouble with that kind of focus of attention, task completion, those type of things.
Yeah, interesting.
Crying behaviors are common. Crying is a physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, whole person, whole body letting go. And sometimes the person might be very aware of what they're crying about, and other times it may come out of the blue, just for no reason at all that they can identify. And again, if they don't recognize this is a typical healthy response, the person might say, whoa, what's wrong with me? Am I going crazy? Am I weak? You know, trying to make sense about it. I just want to encourage you, crying, natural, expected reaction with losses. We could feel very restless. Just, I can't get comfortable.
Yeah.
Or wanting to cling to reminders. I always are holding something that reminds me of it. Or I put pictures everywhere so I never am out of view. Or some type of reminder. And of course, with the holidays, we have all these unintentional reminders.
Sure.
Like, oh yeah, that's always where my loved one sat. Or I put up the tree and my loved one put up the decorations. That explains that blank tree. So the reminders are just sort of built in our traditions and holidays.
Sure.
To calm ourselves, many of us will overeat, overdrink, oversmoke, or do whatever, using substances or even activities, overshop, trying to just distract, find relief, calming. So behaviorally, our grief work can also be quite disruptive. And it can feel very strange to us, maybe even scary to us.
In your work with people as they encounter grief, I mean, what are the extremes, and then what's kind of what's the norm of how quickly people start to experience this stuff, to how long they experience it, and then just everything in between?
Yeah, that's a very common question as we're going through this list of all the different ways grief manifests itself. Some will say, well, I haven't had that yet, or I haven't had that, it might be yet. We'll find that there's not one singular path.
Sure.
And that even the type of loss doesn't tell us whether or not it's going to be intense, moderate, mild. Because what we're going to find is what the loss meant to the person is really the significant factor.
Yep.
For some people, when a pet dies, that it's a sad moment. But it was they expected, they've had many, many pets, and they see pets in somewhat of a detached way. For others, when a pet dies, it's a tremendous loss. Every moment of their day now is different without that pet being present. So I can't know how another will experience it just knowing what their loss was.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you? It's going to be the important variable.
It's a good reminder for those of us that maybe aren't experiencing as much grief around the holidays, but are coming alongside those that are, not to project how that would have been for us onto their scenario, just because it could be so different, and often is so different.
And that's a really important point. We need to recognize what it means to the person experiencing the loss.
Yeah.
That's our reference point. I'm not the standard by which they ought to process like I do.
Yeah.
Another set of losses that we'll encounter is in our thinking. And I've had people make comments like, it seems like all of a sudden I'm stupid. I can't remember anything. I can't solve a problem. Something like it used to be so easy to figure this out. And I'll share, that's normal.
Yeah.
That's to be expected. And at times when we have more reminders like the holidays, that might even be more intense than it was a few weeks ago.
Sure.
So this confusion or impaired concentration, difficulties with problem solving, there also can be a tendency to try to answer what ifs. We'll try to undo the loss, or we'll try to somehow make it not so bad in our thinking. And one of the ways that we'll do that is if only. What if thinking? If only thinking is such a black hole, because it can never be answered.
Yeah.
And what these will do with that type of thinking is we encourage people, let that thought float by. You don't need to pick it up. What if? Move on to the next thought.
Yeah.
Not answer it, because it's not really answerable. But one of the ways many people will try to answer it is they'll blame themselves. If only I had. I should have. I wish I had. I was wrong. I was bad. We can go to deep holes with this line of thinking.
For sure. Yeah.
And when we see others seemingly happy and everything seems in their life like it's great, and I'm so aware that things aren't the way they're supposed to be, it's very, very small step to go into, I'm doing it wrong. So not only what I might falsely blame myself involving the loss, but now I blame myself that I'm not coping right. And there might be some people around us telling us something similar, because they don't understand grief.
Sure.
But we really do need to be mindful that tendency to become critical of ourselves to try to make sense out of it. Or, it's my fault, it's cloudy today, it's my fault. Well, in typical thinking, we go, that doesn't make sense. But boy, in the weight of grief, sometimes it's very tempting. It seems like it does make sense that it's all my fault.
So yeah, it's a good point. As you know, if you're coming alongside someone who's grieving and you see them having that self-critical nature, to encourage them just to observe and describe, but not judge what's happening.
Yes, yeah, you're right.
And even for yourself to do that.
That's good for all of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Something else that'll happen, and it's often more frequent around the holidays and other significant times in the calendar year, are nightmares. Sometimes the dreams will involve the person or an earlier time that's lost or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
Just having that at first may be very scary, and then sometimes it might be comforting, but sometimes the individual becomes afraid to go to sleep. And as they'll share, I'm afraid that I will have a dream like that, and I'm afraid I won't.
Mm.
Because the dream gives a pseudo connection, as if I saw, I heard, whatever it might be.
Sure.
But then if I don't have that dream, it's also a catch. Will I ever have that connection again?
Mm.
So one of the reasons sleep sometimes is disturbed is dreaming is feared, and sometimes there are nightmares that are highly unrealistic, but terrifying nonetheless.
Yeah.
And so in those kind of scenarios, it's really helpful to talk to someone who understands just the natural process of sleeping and dreaming, and to find some strategies for how do we deal with this so that I'm not afraid to go to sleep.
Yeah. That could be very terrifying for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, earlier I did mention that people think, grieving, sadness. That is one of the emotions, but definitely not the only emotion that's activated. People will kind of come in and out of a sense of shock, of a numbness, of feeling nothing or feeling so much, so intensely I can't give a description to any of it.
Mm.
And that dysregulating of our emotions, it's like the demands on us to adjust are so great. My emotions are everywhere.
Huh.
You can't focus. But then as we do focus, of course we feel sadness, that fear, sadness is that emotion of there's a loss. I need to release my attachment to what's gone. So sadness slows us down. And I don't like feeling sad.
Yeah.
And yet many people will watch movies that are sad, helping them feel sad, because sadness does help us let go.
Huh.
Let go of stress, let go of burdens, let go of unrealistic expectations.
Mm.
But also, fear is a real common emotional state. Fear is the emotion, I perceive something's dangerous.
Huh.
And I've got to do something about this potential danger. So what's dangerous with the loss? How will I live without? Will I ever be happy again? Will I ever feel safe again? Will I find contentment ever again? Do I have what it takes to go this alone? All those questions arise when we're adjusting to a loss. Anger is another real common emotion. And anger is the emotion we feel when we perceive something's not the way it ought to be. Well, duh. This shouldn't have changed. This person should be here. My kids should still enjoy this. I put so much into it. Last year they loved it, etc., etc. Our tendency is we expect it to be the way we think it ought to be, and when it's not, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Anger could help us adjust our expectations. What's wrong with anger? I need to change something to correct the wrong, and I can't change history. I can't change developmental progress. Those were my first two choices. So, what's left? I got to change something in me.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, that's changing our expectations. Sometimes it's changing our boundaries. When the discussion goes that way, it's best I step back.
Yeah.
It's so predictable. It's going to go in a destructive place that no good comes out of. I'll step back. I'll change my expectation of me. Or when they say that, how am I going to interpret it? Is that personal, or is that just them talking about them? That's them, not me. Anger is very adaptive that way. It helps us change ourselves so that we can deal with what's wrong. But sometimes, because anger, it feels kind of good if you have a little power, particularly if I've got a lot of sadness. So sometimes anger is a secondary emotion where it covers up the more vulnerable of hurt, sadness, fear. And so if I'm feeling angry, I might want to look at what do I need to change? What do I see that's wrong? What do I need to change? Third, what else is there? What else am I feeling?
Yeah.
And asking that question or discussing that with another person can help us get to the rest of these emotions. Actually, to save a little time here, there's not a human emotion that is not part of grief. Even happiness. And how can that be? Because there will be times we will have a memory that just brings a sense of joy and happiness for that moment. Wow, that was good. And then sadness, I miss that.
Yeah.
But notice, if I can't have sadness, I'm not going to have that happy moment. So all of the emotions are involved in our processing.
I would imagine even with kind of on the heels of happiness, when you're thinking of something happy, that some people may respond immediately to that with guilt, the guilt of like, why am I happy? This person's no longer here.
Absolutely. That's a real common one.
Yeah.
Or does it indicate I really don't care that much?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is that, oh, that's so shaming.
Yeah.
So when someone asks, what am I going to feel when I'm grieving? And I'll get that question maybe from someone who's just recently had a loss.
Sure.
My response is something like, everything. And that's helpful.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like feeling, no, I don't either. But it's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something that when we're working on grief work, we just want to keep in mind there's a purpose.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say, am I depressed or am I grieving? Well, when we see that the sadness and the low energy and the confusion and all those features that are similar to depression, but they're around the loss, that's not depression.
Yeah.
Depression doesn't have a meaning to it.
Yeah.
It's a dysfunction, malfunction. Grief is a healthy function.
Yeah. Yep.
Just often miserable.
Yeah. Would it be accurate to state that if you're experiencing healthy grief, it's going to be like riding a roller coaster where there's going to be ups and downs, and that's just, maybe it's fun at times, but maybe not, but like that is just the natural process of the highs and the lows.
And it might be in the same minute.
Yeah.
Yes. And that is healthy because there's many features of adapting that we have to do.
Yeah.
And so we need all of our emotions to do such a complex adaptation.
Yeah. Yeah, and even, you think about the complex adaptation of grieving in a moment, and then you multiply that times however many moments that you're going to have. Yeah, it's kind of an endless roller coaster. Or not endless, but,
it sure seems like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is often scary is I don't know what I'll feel next. Or, maybe I'm invited to go see the Christmas Carol or whatever. Well, I can imagine that would be very enjoyable. I can imagine that would be so painful. I just don't want to be there. I want to crawl out of my own skin.
Yeah.
And I won't know till I'm there.
Yeah.
What do I do? And so that type of unpredictability, I'll use the phrase, grief work is predictably unpredictable. Normalizing that helps people have an increased sense of boldness to make a decision. Well, I'll go for it. And I'll be able to cope whatever comes up. One of the realities that's very much a part of our grief work is our spiritual lives. I've been sharing with you continually, grief has purpose, it has meaning. And after a great loss, frankly, it may look like nothing has meaning.
Yeah.
And how do I develop a narrative that can account for what's happened? And God is good.
Yeah.
For some people, they find a closeness spiritually that they've never experienced before in this process. And they maybe very strongly identify with maybe the 23rd Psalm, being cared for in that way as they're walking through the valley of the shadow of death. For others, the complete opposite. Dark, black hole, all alone, nothing makes sense. And when I cry out, it seems like there's nobody hearing me. And for many, features of both of those experiences. It can be very scary to have that type of spiritual experience. God's not operating how I expected he would. My faith seems so different than it did before the loss. And that can be a terrifying experience.
Sure.
We talked earlier about anger as a secondary emotion. A fairly common response is people experiencing a real anger at God, at their faith, at the church, and sometimes because they've expected things that are very unrealistic. But many times it's a secondary emotion where if I were just quiet, I'd be terrified. Or if I were just quiet, I would be so sad I don't know that I could lift my head. But anger seems to have energy. Anger feels like I can do something. I can make a difference. Whereas if I'm sad or hurt or fear or shame, I may just feel helpless. Many times this is worked out in our spiritual lives in a way we might not do it with a human being that's next to us. Probably that wouldn't go well. But, we see this in the Psalms, some of the calling out in pain, the grieving that they're doing, and extreme expressions of pain, including physical pain, emotional pain. They're not struck dead at that moment.
No, not at all.
No.
Yeah, I think God has plenty big shoulders to take our anger, our doubts, our questions on, and allow us to be in that moment what we're feeling and thinking.
Yeah, we can look at that a little more later. But for this point in our spiritual responses, again, I encourage people, allow yourself the flexibility to find out what they are. Don't predetermine.
Yeah.
And that when you have responses like you've never had before, that is not evidence of a loss of faith. That is evidence of, I need to make adjustments here.
Yeah.
Because I've never faced what I'm facing right now.
Yeah. I'm trying to work this out.
I've got to work this out.
I mean, it goes back to a while ago in a podcast episode, we talked about transitions and the need to kind of just be and not massively make any what we think are corrective decisions, whether that's cognitively or actual decision action-oriented stuff, but just to allow things to kind of be so that we can kind of walk through them and understand what this is meaning for us.
Yeah, and many of us are not the most patient.
Yeah.
I want to know the conclusion now.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll acknowledge I'm one who might read a review of a movie to find out the plot, or I might skim the last chapter of the book. I've been known to do that. I want to know how it's going to end as I go through it. And that's not available in life.
You're saying we can't Amazon Prime that to us in 2 days?
No. I can't chat GPT and find out.
Yeah.
And so our faith is active. One of the things that's happening in dealing with these great losses is I'm sorting out, what do I place my faith in? And I know all the right answers.
Sure.
But now I'm tested functionally
You're
like
exposed.
I never have before.
Yeah.
And how do I calm myself? Where do I find comfort? And when where we have found comfort is absent, gone, that's a crisis.
Yeah.
I've got to figure out how to find that comfort.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things I think it would be helpful for us to think about is the reason a loss is so disruptive is we are designed to connect, to attach, to bond. And we bond with people. We bond with pets, as I was mentioning earlier. We bond with many of our objects. I know when I lose my phone, that's distressing until I find it. And I wish that weren't the case as much. But I have comfort of my phone. I know where it is. Loss breaks that bond, breaks the attachments that we find comfort in. And grief is working to find new ways to find comfort, given that this old way is no longer available to us. And a lot of that means I have to change my expectation. I have to accept a reality I don't like.
Yeah.
And boy, the holidays so often are just sprinkled with expectations of how good this is going to be.
Yeah.
And that may not be anywhere near where I'm at this point in time.
Well, exactly. Or even, I think, social media does us such a disservice.
Oh, yes.
Because we are experiencing the reality of all the losses or dysfunction of our family system while we look on social media at everybody's sculpted perfect moment.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, oh, everybody else is perfect except for us, and it just kind of highlights the grief that we have because of that.
Feeling all the more isolated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which brings up a very important recommendation. I do encourage people during grief work, be very careful with social media.
Yeah.
The people that you want to connect with them directly, not in that open format, and whenever possible, face to face, rather than virtually, digitally.
Yeah.
And that's not always possible given geography, etc.
Sure.
But face to face is so important. Let me describe the work of grief, giving it a little more definition. I've been using that phrase, and I'm going to refer to a model that was developed by Warden. And he talked about there's 4 tasks. Now, we often hear about the stages of grief, and I would just suggest from a researcher's perspective, those have very often been misapplied to the actual process of grief. and so the authors of some of the stage work have been very clear. No, this is not about grief in general. This is about the process in this really specific area.
Sure.
So I'm going to talk more about the work that has to be done during grief.
Yeah.
And he says in his research, he's concluded the first step is we have to accept reality. We have to accept and give up the fight that it is what it is. I mentioned earlier the principle of irreversibility.
Yeah.
It can't be undone. And I hate that. I want it back. I want that person. I want that opportunity. I want that time of life I'll hear people describe. And as long as I'm trying to get it back, I will not adapt. But saying goodbye to what I want so desperately, that's hard. And that takes often a lot of intentionality. I have to say goodbye. We have rituals that can help us with that. But a lot of times that happens in our prayers, in our journaling, in our quiet times, maybe in our walks while we're kind of just talking to ourselves, where there is a sense of hopelessness. Not about everything.
Sure.
Hopelessness that I can get back what's gone. As we accept the reality of this, there is tremendous pain that is evident. Now, there's pain in accepting the reality of it, but the pain in that task is working to help us face it's gone. As we're more accepting it's gone, now the pain of being without.
Yeah.
And got to go through it, which I've often asked, what is option B?
Can't take door 2.
Yeah. And going through it, a couple observations on that. Emotions have a purpose. They help us adapt. Going through is different than stopping, parking, setting up camp, staying there. To go through is to be recognizing the emotion, identifying what's it telling me, what's the signal value, or making changes, experiencing that emotion, lessening other emotions coming into my experience. The scriptures talk about don't let the sun go down on your anger. The idea being deal with things as they come up. That's what we're designed for, to be very flexible and adapting. And as we're accepting the reality of a great loss, we have to go through. And it's uncomfortable often, but it also has those moments of joys. That in that moment of sadness, I had that glimpse of how good it was. And that was just such a bright moment. And then I longed for it, but I still had that bright moment with me. And that was comforting. So the going through is not just pain, but it is a process of ebbing and flowing, kind of the roller coaster you mentioned.
Yeah.
As the emotions are helping us make the adaptations, we're able to do the work of finding out how to live without. So how do I get the turkey carved when the person who all my life carved the turkey from when I was a little, my first memories on, is not with us now? And that's a practical question.
Yeah, totally.
And we can just kind of go, oh, of course, anybody like to play with knives? Help yourself. But even if we take a cavalier attitude towards it, we're still observing, processing that it's different, and having to find a way to do without what was lost. And we do that on each and every little item that we were associated with that person, or with that phase of life, or with an object, or whatever it might be that we've lost. we learn how to do it different and to find the goodness, the joy in that. Which lets us engage in this fourth task of having a new place in our lives for the memories of what's been lost. We might have that real bright moment, that memory, and every time I think about that, it brings a smile on my face. That's very different than I expect when I walk into the room that'll be happening.
Sure.
So it still is comforting. It's still part of my life. It's still very important to me. A lot of meaning.
Yeah.
And I know it's in memory, but memory living out right now in the present context.
Yeah.
And that's healthy adaptation. So we don't do these things, well, I finished task 1, now I'm ready for task 2. But for each expectation, each connection, each event, we're working on these, sometimes 2 or 3 of the tasks at the same time, sometimes just one of the tasks. And there might be places where I've fully accepted this element, but man, I still can't hold on to this.
Yeah.
And it's in the same loss, but there are different features of it, of how it impacted me. So this work is ongoing for each and every connection, each and every attachment, expectation.
Yeah. It's a long process for sure.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. But the work is adaptive and purposeful.
Yeah.
And during the holidays, it can seem like it's just more pain.
Yeah.
But we can even find some relief from the pain by acknowledging its purpose and recognizing when I do see myself adapting.
Yeah. Yeah.
One friend of mine shared that first Thanksgiving she had lost her husband, all her children had lost their father, their grandchildren lost their grandfather. And she recognized after the meal was finished, I actually had a good time. I didn't think I could. And it had only for them been a few months, several months, but this was the first time they'd been through it.
Yeah.
And we'll see that's one of the factors. The first time after a great loss, such an unknown.
Yeah.
That can be so scary.
For sure. Yeah, a lot of unknowns that you're just not ready to address or to have to deal with.
Yeah. And so we create a story in our mind of how we think it's going to be.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's catastrophized. I can't do this. I don't know how I'll survive.
Yeah.
Etc. There's a lot of myths around grief, and if we're aware of some of them, that may help us not form such unrealistic expectations. And one of the myths we've already talked about is grief is only sadness. Yeah, I'm very sad, but why do I always feel sick of my stomach and I can't concentrate? What's wrong with me? Am I going crazy? No, that's part of.
Yeah.
Not something separate and different.
Yeah, exactly.
Another that we'll hear is time heals all wounds. Not necessarily. And we'll see that while grief takes time,
Yeah.
The work of grief takes so much more than time.
Yeah.
And so a related myth is that grief is linear. It's most intense right at the beginning, and then it's a downward slope. With enough time, I'm good. No. Roller coaster.
Yeah.
Grief will ebb and flow from low intensity to very high intensity and everything in between. And it might do it in a very short amount of time. We can just have ebbs and flows. So some people, and they'll look at maybe in Ecclesiastics to find a phrase that we grieve for a season. So that means in 3 months it's over. No. Well, how long will it take? And the answer is as long as it takes. Will I ever get over it? You'll always be different.
Mm-hmm.
So getting over it like it never happened? No. No, you'll always be different.
Yeah.
Have a very good, meaningful life? Very probable. Tremendously miss what's lost? Very probable. So the goal is not to be like it was before. That's not possible.
Yeah, exactly.
And certainly the goal is not like it never happened,
Yeah.
because that would be the loss of everything, including reality. The goal is to adapt to live well
Mm-hmm.
in the present, bringing forth into the present the good from the past.
Yeah.
Another myth is that all losses produce the same grief,
Yeah.
or different losses automatically produce different kinds of grief. For example, we grieve more for a person than we do for a pet. We grieve more for a pet than we do for a thing. We grieve more for an electronic thing than we do a mechanical thing. You know, people go all kinds of hierarchies
Yeah.
that are very irrelevant.
Yeah.
Rather, what it means to the person who's had the loss.
Mm-hmm.
And an outsider can't determine that.
Exactly.
And frankly, grieving helps us understand what it meant to us.
Mm.
Many times we don't know how attached we were till the losses occurred.
Yeah.
And so the griever is very much growing, learning more about themselves. And one of the things anthropologists tell us, people who have lived a lot of years cross-culturally, historically, have been understood to have wisdom, because living a lot of years, you've had a lot of losses, and you sort out what's really important, moderately important, less important, that really isn't important. And the wisdom comes from finding out what's important and organizing life in that way.
Yeah.
Grief helps us grow.
Mm.
Another myth is we only grieve one loss at a time. And one of the things I recognized at the first holiday season after my father died, which had been many months before, but the first time the holiday season came, I missed my mother more that year than I had missed her for a number of years.
Huh.
She had died, 12 years earlier, and always aware, but there was like a different type of missing her. And as I talked with some of my siblings and some of my colleagues about this, I recognized, I had adjusted to being without her during that time, and I was starting to adjust to being without him during that time. But I had a third category that I'd never even thought about. Adjust to being without them.
Huh.
And adjust to, now I'm an orphan. Grandpa orphan. But still, I'd never been in that place before.
Yeah.
And so I was in some ways grieving the loss of my mother, which more than a decade before, in a fresh way that I hadn't even thought about before.
Mm.
Healthy, adaptive, helped me grow, unexpected.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I was able to have the permission from myself to look at it and not judge myself for
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The last myth I want to mention is something very common in our culture, and it's called closure.
Mm.
We could say, by some people's definition, I had closure in grieving my mother's death around the holidays. I was very familiar with her not being there.
Yeah.
We had some new traditions, some altered traditions. It was now normal. But as I found out when my father died, no, that wasn't closure. That was a new familiarity.
Yeah.
And I think the idea of closure is appealing to us because we want to be done with the uncomfortable.
Exactly.
But no, each time we encounter an attachment, an expectation associated with what we've lost, we need to do the grief work. We need to adapt to it.
Yeah.
So closure is trying to shut the door on something that door doesn't shut. Not sure there is a door. With the permission to not seek closure, but to seek living well.
Yeah.
We could have flexibility.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
We can adjust in a meaningful way to the new reality.
Yeah. So the work of grief has purpose, releasing what we've lost, adjusting to being without it, letting our emotions help us in that adjustment, having a new relationship with the memories, living well with the memories and the present in the current situation. But it's hard work and it's painful.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will say, well, am I depressed? And there is something called complicated grief, which I'm going to describe simply as we get so stuck in our grief that it's lost its purpose. Maybe the person is refusing to adapt, sometimes very consciously. No, not going to. I'm thinking of a person who, in essence, demand that the deceased loved one come back. Which everyone around them realized that's not how it works. But she was adamant. Just no. And in essence, I am not going to move forward. Okay. That is a denial of the grief process. That individual is very stuck. That individual I met because the individual was very depressed. Now, depression was treated in a couple of ways, and as the depression lifted, we started to do the grief work. But the depression wasn't the grief work. In fact, the depression was stopping the grief work. And so one of the things we look at, even though they may look similar, some of the differences we'll look for is, does the individual recognize their longing, their struggle for adapting, adjusting, being without? Are they dealing with the reality of that? Do they still notice purpose? And in the case I was describing, it's more like this person was, I'm going to roll over and wait for reality to change. So they had lost all sense of adapting. The world had to adapt to me rather than me adapt to the world.
Yeah.
In grieving, anger is focused on what's wrong with the loss. In depression, anger is diffuse. It may not really be focused on much of anything.
Yeah.
Or it's all self-focused, or it's all other-focused. But it's not about the loss per se. In depression, there's a real poor response to others typically. Apathy, indifference, doesn't really result in much change. In grief, most typically, even people who are wanting to isolate, when they're around someone who is responsive to them, receives them, compassionate, they experience a lift. They experience a release. It doesn't fix the situation.
Sure.
But they're not alone. That need to connect is somewhat met.
Yeah.
They appreciate it. They may still feel horrible.
Sure.
But they appreciate it.
Yeah. Huh.
So with this idea of the meaninglessness of depression, we can sometimes see people, people of faith even seemingly choosing a depression approach rather than living out their faith. And here's what I mean by that. The depression can develop with a sense of meaninglessness. And what do people do when they experience meaninglessness? Very often they create a narrative to account for it. And the narrative often isn't very accurate, maybe not at all, but they got a story that makes sense. So sometimes people that are in a faith community, they will deny the loss, deny the importance of the loss, deny the significance of the loss, and talk instead about how their faith carries them through, about how they're fine, everything's fine, I'm just rejoicing that whatever. In walking in faith, we are, like Jesus did in his earthly ministry, we are experiencing the fullness of the human experience. Sometimes it is joy. In a fallen world, sometimes it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
And with great losses, it's disproportionately not.
Yeah.
Whereas the person that's in denial or is trying to control, they minimize the pain of the loss. It's reminds me of an old movie I saw as a young person. It's Only a Flesh Wound. Individual who was very badly wounded in this comedy. Only a flesh wound. The reality is everyone else is seeing you're bleeding all over. Nope, I'm good. The person walking in faith will have that roller coaster that you described, that uneven peak and valley, times of optimism, times of deep fear, pessimism, times of joy, times of sadness, etc. And we see an unnatural stability in the person that is either denying or is in that more depressed state. It's just sort of all the same, and they're not responding and adapting. They're in a process that's not helping them adjust. The person that's living in faith, doing grief work, acknowledges questions they don't have answers to. One of the things we see in the love chapter is a feature of love, Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 13, is acknowledging, I see through a glass poorly, as if a poor reflection. Now I know only in part.
Yeah.
And grief leaves us with so many questions. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Why? The person in denial, the person that's in a depressive place, rather than doing the grief work, they don't have questions. They're all answered.
Mm-hmm.
And they might even be irritated if somebody else has questions. And the person that's doing grief work continues to have the full spectrum of personal needs for connection with others, needs to be understood, needs to understand somebody else, needs to connect, needs for rest, needs for activity, on and on. The person in denial, the person in a depressed state, rather than grieving, doing the work of grief, will find that they tend to deny personal needs. I'm fine. I'm strong. In Christ, we can do anything. But there's not that vulnerability with themselves, with God, or with others. So when a depression does develop for someone who's struggling with great loss, and sometimes it does, That's not grief work. That's grief work gone awry.
Huh.
We need to address the depression, lessen the intensity, return and engage in the grief work.
Interesting. So how, are there ways in which you would go about lessening the depression in a scenario like that when it's maybe more of a result of grief that they've slipped into depression versus?
And there can be so many variables there, Ryan. Some of us biologically are more vulnerable to depression than others, and for some, we can cross some threshold and boom, the body is now malfunctioning.
Yeah.
And we really need help with the body, and often medicine can be one of those helps.
Sure.
To facilitate the neurological system, endocrinological system, returning to a more healthy functioning level.
Mm-hmm.
For others, we can bring about change sometimes with things like changing lifestyle patterns.
Mm-hmm.
For example, there are those who really benefit from a brisk 20, 30-minute walk early in the morning rather than laying in bed ruminating.
Sure.
It changes how they're functioning. For others, we can take a look at some of the very destructive thought patterns that they're engaging in, and we can identify them, teach other patterns, ways of interpreting, ways of processing, what to do when they encounter. For some, it really involves breaking the social isolation, getting them in contact with others, and being regularly interacting with other people, even though initially they don't feel like it. Just getting into that. So we need to tailor the response to address the depression by what the person is displaying and what they're needing.
Sure. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And then you can move into the grief work.
Yeah. And then for others, giving definition of what we've just been talking about, they can start to see, I don't want to do that, which often is opening the door to, okay, let's do the work.
Sure.
And so there's just many ways that we might respond.
Yeah, yep.
The old adage, one size does not fit all. Fearfully and wonderfully made we are.
Yeah, that's for sure. Complicated.
Yeah. Let me shift gears here just a bit. The holidays, as we've been saying all along, present some real special challenges. And we'll use a term, they can trigger us. And that's a term that's gotten into the common language.
Yeah.
I was triggered by, whatever. And triggers are they're real. They're powerful. They're not always indicating something negative.
Sure.
For example, I was watching my grandson at an athletic event, and it triggered a memory I hadn't thought about for years of an event I was in when I was that age. And it just brought like a sense of joy and humor to me. But I hadn't thought about that for a long time.
Yeah.
So trigger, we're not thinking necessarily it's a negative thing, but it is a real thing. And a trigger is when we have a response physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, when we have a person response to some type of stimuli. It might be something that we observe, it might be something that we remember, it might be something that we sense, like a smell can be a strong trigger, or a sound. One of the things that I often have heard complaints about people when they're struggling with grief over the holidays is, I have no more capacity for Christmas music. I just hear this song and then that song. It's like, I don't have time to catch up. It's so much. So we can be triggered by any type of stimulation internally or externally. And when we're triggered, we might have a very small response,
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't like that. And then realize, oh, yeah, that was burning rubber. I didn't even know what I was smelling. I just had this sense, I don't like it. Or it might be a very complex one, like the one I just shared, where, I kind of thought on that, reflected on that, and chuckled about it. And I actually enjoyed watching my grandson more, thinking what that was like when I was that age. Wide variety of responses we can have.
Yeah, totally.
But sometimes triggers can evoke quite a bit of pain. And we can start to avoid situations because I don't want to be triggered.
Mm-hmm.
Or when we are triggered, it can be really overwhelming. So what can we do there? Well, we want to help or gain confidence in identifying that I am being triggered. Because a lot of times people will have the experience of what's happening. I'm out of control. I'm falling apart. Am I going crazy? And rather, when we understand triggers, like, oh, I was just triggered. Okay, now I know what to do. So giving it language, describing it, not judging, describing it can be real helpful. How do I notice it? Well, if I notice a rapid emotional change, I'm sitting there just calm and all of a sudden I'm repulsed. I was probably triggered. If I have a reaction that I'm surprised by, all of a sudden I got real tense and I'm not sure why. That's probably a response to a trigger. I want to identify when that's happening, and then I want to see what context is this happening in. Is this something I'm sensing, like through seeing or smelling, tasting, touching? Was I thinking about something that I kind of bumped into this? What's the pattern here? Or what's the context? Sometimes it's really helpful to talk to somebody that knows us, that gets us. There might be somebody right there with us at the moment. Do you smell anything? I just had a scenario like that recently, and my wife said, oh yeah. Oh, I didn't even recognize that. And it's like, okay, everything's in place. Now that makes sense. But at first it was alarming. So even just talking with somebody or journaling, or maybe in prayer, what is this associated with? What does it remind me of? Where did I smell this before, hear this before? Whose voice am I hearing? Those kind of questions. So curiosity helps us with our triggers.
Yeah.
It counteracts that sense of fear, danger. And that makes a big difference.
For sure.
Also, it can be really helpful to intentionally differentiate then and now, past and present. So with my pleasant example of watching my son's athletic event, I gotta, I'm so happy for him. My time's over for that one. If I go out there right now, that would not be good. And even that can be kind of humorous, but it helps recognizing that was then, this is now, can be calming and reorienting to the present. So we'll use the word, we want to ground ourselves, be on what's solid. And we can do that in any number of ways. Sometimes even something like looking in a mirror, or counting backwards, or another where I have to use some mental energy to fill in that. Or there's a technique, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Name 5 things I see, 4 things I feel, 3 things I hear, 2 things I smell, 1 thing I taste. So all of a sudden I've re-engaged my processing to be present-oriented. Talking with someone about it in the present can help ground us. Recognizing our boundaries can help ground us. All of these type of strategies help us be in the moment, acknowledging the trigger. And as we integrate that into ourselves, I'm growing.
It's good. It's a good reminder because triggers can happen so often.
So another phenomena around triggers that I want to bring up is called a Stug response. And many have shared with me, knowing about Stug responses turned out to be really helpful to them. So Stug, S-T-U-G, stands for a spontaneous, temporary upsurge of grief. Spontaneous, didn't see that coming. Temporary, for a moment, for a brief time, it's very likely intense, but it doesn't stay that way. Upsurge, it came seemingly out of nowhere and kind of overtook me. It dominated my experience for that moment, and it's a grief process. So let me describe a scenario that happened a long time ago that explains or demonstrates this. A woman who had lost her husband many years ago, or some years ago, was doing really well in so many ways. She had made tremendous adjustments, was living well, and she and her girlfriends decided to take a trip together, and they were in a tourist town together, and these are women in their, maybe late 50s, early 70s. And they went in this little boutique, and for young women's clothing, as she described it to me. And they're deciding, let's try on this fashionable stuff for young women. And these women, I think there were 5 or 6 of them, they're going in and out of dressing rooms, and they're trying them on. They're laughing, and I guess a couple of them were taking pictures of each other, unbeknown to the other, and they're just having all kinds of fun. And all of a sudden, the woman that I knew burst into tears and collapsed on the floor. This freaked out her friends. And then just a moment later, while she was on the floor, she started to laugh. Now her friends are really freaked out. What's happening? And then she said, I'm having a Stug reaction, which they were wondering if she was coherent because they'd never heard that word before. And so here's what she discovered, and she explained to her friends and then told me the story later. While they were having such a good time trying on clothes, there was music from long ago. Oldies rock station was being played in the background at this little boutique. And there was a song being played that had been our song. She and her boyfriend and husband of 50 years or whatever, that had been their song. It was not a very popular song.
Sure.
In fact, in the years that he had been gone, she'd never heard it. She'd never thought about it.
Yeah.
This is the first time since her loss that she had encountered this reminder. And it was like the loss was brand new that moment. Because she never adjusted to hearing our song since he was gone.
Yeah.
We have to adjust to each attachment, each expectation. When she recognized what it was, she had such relief. It didn't scare her now. She recognized how much she loved that song and started to sing along. We will have those Stug reactions at unexpected, they're spontaneous, at unexpected times, the first time we encounter something associated with our loss.
Yeah.
And think how often that's going to happen around holidays.
Exactly.
And they're not all going to happen the first holiday season.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the second, or the third, or the fourth. So when will I stop having Stugs? No way to know.
Yeah, exactly.
No way to know. So when they happen, I know what it is. It's not scary now.
It's a good reminder of all the little details that you're going to have to encounter and deal with, over the course of a grief that you have experienced and are working through. Because, you don't think about things like, that song was important to us, or other little things that probably happen 1,000 times over to people as they're grieving.
Yeah. You may not come across, a picture that triggers a memory until years later.
Yeah.
Or one that someone shared with me not too long ago, that there was a dish that they had at Thanksgiving every year that mother had brought, and a child's fiance brought that dish. No one had brought it in all that time. But all of a sudden that dish showed up, and it was very challenging for this person. At first, they didn't know, why am I having such a strong reaction? Thinking, I should be so thankful that you brought it. Instead, I just feel overwhelmed and horrible. And then she could put words to it. Oh, Mom, I miss you right now. And then that was adapting, and she felt relief. But that first moment scared her.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Years later, it can happen.
Yeah. Amazing.
Well, I'm going to change direction just a bit again, because given that the holidays are coming, given that we are adapting to these losses, what is going to help me cope?
Yeah.
Let's get as practical as we can. And the first thing I'm going to encourage is permission to grieve. And what do you mean permission? It's going to happen. I can't stop it. Well, I can fight it, or I can benefit from it.
Yeah.
And when I have permission to grieve, I can benefit. I can identify what's gone, what you've lost, and recognize how complex the loss is, how pervasive it is, all the different aspects of it. I have permission to go at my pace. I may not have the energy I would have otherwise. I may need more rest. I may need more alone time. I may need more people time than I usually do. It's going to be different, and I have permission to do it different, which means I may modify some traditions. I may not continue some traditions. I may even start a new one. Permission to adapt, to modify expectations, permission to do what it takes to live well in the moment. Now, we can ask everyone involved for that permission, but that doesn't mean everyone will understand what's happening.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean everyone experiences grief in any meaningful or intense way. We could say they should, but maybe they don't. That's their story. I need to also have my boundaries in place, and I'm defining boundaries in a couple of ways. It's really important that I have a sense of my grief is me. On the one hand, it's very lonely. It's mine. It's unique to me. I'm the oldest of 5. We each grieved as our parents passed, but each was different.
Yeah.
And if it's expected to be the same, we're having just more losses.
Yeah.
So the recognition, what's me, what's not me, but also the recognition of what I am responsible for and what I'm not. And I define that as I am responsible for how I treat myself and how I treat other people. That's my dignity. I step in, I take responsibility, accept responsibility. What I do makes a difference. But I'm not responsible for how they treat me or treat other people or treat themselves. That's theirs. And so I might have influence there, but I can't get them to understand. I can't get them to maybe even show respect for something that's really important for me to be respected. I have to recognize, yes, I embrace what is mine, but I have to let go of what's not mine. And sometimes that means detaching a bit more. That means often changing my expectations. But when I have realistic boundaries, I'm going to experience much more safety. It's going to be easier to give myself permission, to give others permission to do it their way.
Yeah.
Another recommendation that we talk about is to have some rituals of remembrance.
Mm.
And for some, that's very elaborate. For others, it's much less so. But it is helpful to do something and maybe develop a new tradition that recognizes publicly, not just inside me.
Sure.
Sometimes when we're with someone who's had a loss, it doesn't affect us as much. Maybe there was someone that they were close to, we met them, we didn't know them well. Their life is much more altered by this loss than ours is.
Mm.
What the ritual does is facilitates in that community, maybe you have extended family at the table, everybody recognizing the loss has occurred.
Mm.
And for the one that it's really meaningful to, yeah, I understand you didn't know them well. But wow, I appreciate that you're acknowledging that the loss is meaningful, is significant. That can be really powerful.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's done in a family prayer, or families find all kinds of ways to acknowledge the loss. During this time of the holidays, it's all the more important to have intentional connection. And if it's predictable that being with my family is only going to have moderate connection, where am I going to get the rest? My connection needs don't go away just because these people are visiting.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I need to intentionally, do I get together with my safe people during this time also? Well, since they're visiting from out of state, I need to spend all the time I can with them. Well, maybe the time will be better if I have breakfast with my buddy, who we get each other, and then, okay, I'll have lunch with these others who we have some history, but we don't know each other very well.
Sure.
Be respectful of the connection needs you have, and be intentional. How are these going to be met during this time when often our schedules are so different than they are the rest of the year?
Yeah.
Sometimes people find it's really helpful during this intense time to see, where can I do some active service? I kind of stretch outside of me and I provide something for others. So I know somebody, and now it became a ritual, now a tradition, but it started with that first Thanksgiving after his wife died. He didn't want to just serve his children Thanksgiving meal without her there. And he said, we'll have a Thanksgiving on Friday. On Thursday, the family volunteered at the local mission.
Huh.
And the family served these strangers. And they shared in it, and the way they talked, I'm kind of getting goosebumps remembering this story. Mom would love what we're doing. And now, there are grandchildren in this story, and these people serve on Thanksgiving in honor of wife, mom, grandma. The grandchildren never met,
Yeah.
but they know her legacy.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's ways of involving some act of service. Another person I'm thinking of would make a quilt, and then give a quilt to a rescue mission or a women's shelter, some place where there's going to be a need.
Sure.
But as making the quilt, that was part of their grieving through the holiday season. They're doing something meaningful and occupying them, and then it became now a tradition.
Yeah.
So sometimes like that, acts of service.
That's awesome.
Be physically active.
Mm.
In our northern hemisphere, there's less light. It's in many parts of the country cooler, maybe even colder. And we're often around a lot of people or around a lot of food, and there's a tendency to be less active. It can be very helpful to stay active. And walking, that counts. It doesn't have to be a real intense workout, but be intentional about being physical, active, and also intentional about physically resting. Sometimes go, 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 and we're just depleted.
Exactly.
And then what can we do? How can we cope well spiritually? Well, one answer might be the same as always. But thinking about how our faith is impacted by the losses that we're adjusting to, we're taking a look at how am I praying? For some, they find it really helpful, and I'm thinking of some people who've never done this before in life. They found that there were written prayers. And they started to read written prayers. And they found that was really helpful because they were acknowledging, I don't have the words. I want to pray and I'm just so blank. But reading the words of others they can identify with, connect with, feeling some connection with God. Our faith often helps us understand our loss in a larger context. Not that it answers the why.
Sure.
Don't get that. But the lament process, and that's, we go into that another time in much more detail. But the lament that we see in so many of the Psalms, in the Book of Lamentations, but the lament, the crying out of what it's like to be me in this tough, painful place. And a lament is not just thinking, not just feeling, it's whole body, whole person. And then in the lament, we're able to see at different levels where God is. Often not where we expect him to be or even maybe want him to be. Sometimes it's helpful to read a psalm of lament before we actually try to, if you will, free it, freestyle. But that can be real helpful here. Worship. And I'm thinking of one person who shared they didn't go to church the first year during the holidays because there were so many triggers. The second year they did, and they identified the first week I just couldn't sing the traditional songs. But hearing people around me sing them at first brought pain and then brought joy. And before long I was singing with them. Being physically present in worship, embodied, can be a way to facilitate our spiritual adaptation in living well. It's so important that we participate in the community. Go to an event when I don't really feel like it. Invite somebody over when I'm kind of tossing up, it's better to be alone, or invite them in. For those of us that are around someone who's in this type of grief, it's so important that we reach out to them, include them, invite them. They can always say no thanks, but let's not make that decision for them, not giving them the opportunity.
Sure.
And it's really important for us to be able to mention the loss, to use the name of the person, or to talk about what was lost in a normal conversational way. We're not doing therapy with them. How do you feel when I use the name? No, rather, I was just thinking, you really would have liked this. George would have loved it. Yeah, George would have. And I've been told by many that when others use the name of it's a person who's died, they just feel cared for in that moment. And that's what we're needing, connecting, belonging.
Yeah, there's a lot of just intentional effort that is part of the process of coping well. both on the part of the person grieving, but on those that are coming alongside individuals that are grieving and supporting them well.
And in supporting them well, being present. And
Yeah.
this is, I know I err on not being present enough. Probably because I'm a person who likes a fair amount of solitude, but not all it. And I need to recognize that the other can say, it's not a good time. Something else that I think is really important is for us, and we use this phrase a lot, describe, not judge.
Mm-hmm.
When I see someone having a reaction that I don't understand, it is very important I don't fill in the blanks. And I can say, I don't understand that. But that's what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it leads to a discussion. Sometimes it doesn't. It's just like, that's how it is. I don't need to know everything. I can't know everything. So that permission to let the other, I give them permission to grieve as they are. Be careful not to offer advice unless specifically asked, and then the advice should be specific to the request. One of the most frequent complaints people have shared with me is they're telling me how I should grieve, and it's like all of a sudden now I'm invisible. And it's worse than if they had said nothing.
Yeah.
So being with, listening, sharing, talking, not advice giving.
Yeah.
And many times we think it will help them. No,
It doesn't.
it doesn't. Sometimes we can provide opportunities that are meaningful to us and to them. And as we do that, we could let them, invite them in. But even if we have a similar relationship with the person that's lost, we will have different experiences there. So again, that permission giving,
Yep.
let them have theirs, mine, and we're both doing our work.
Yeah.
We're both
Exactly.
growing.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a hard time for so many of us.
For sure.
But it can also be a very good time and a very productive time. A lot of growth can occur during this time.
Yeah. Yeah. And a great opportunity to be to one another how God has designed us to be.
Yes. Yeah. 'Cause it's world's not the way it's supposed to be in so many ways.
Yeah.
And we've got to adjust to that.
Yeah.
And yet our Creator has made us so that we can.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess, as I think about what's one of the takeaways, I hope one of the takeaways from all that we've talked about is a hope that we are able to adapt, to live very well, that the losses become a new meaning within us.
Yeah.
And in that way, we do continue on with them.
Yeah.
And the work to get there, it's worth it.
It is. Yeah. There's a hope in it.
There is definitely a hope in it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hoping we can take with us.
Exactly. Yeah. Grief is a reminder that things aren't the way that God has designed them to be, but in the midst of that, yeah, there's still meaning and purpose and hope that we can derive from it, even if it is difficult as we move through it.
Yep.
So, yeah. Appreciate you sharing today. And I'm sure this is going to be helpful for many people out there as they encounter the holiday seasons and walk through whatever griefs that they're walking through. And then those of us that maybe aren't experiencing as much grief can come alongside those that are and help support them well through this journey, because that's what we're designed to do and that's what we're called to be to one another as the body of Christ. So appreciate you sharing today.
Well, I'm happy to have the opportunity, and it's always good to be together, right?
Exactly. We'll see ya.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. Embracing New Life is a production of New Life Resources, a Christian counseling clinic in southeast Wisconsin whose aim and goal since 1976 has been to provide high-quality professional counseling, psychological, and consulting services from within a Christian framework.